Okay, let's unpack this. It's a deeply unsettling reality, isn't it? That some of the most horrific acts of violence are committed by individuals who are, well, in many ways, still children themselves.
It really is.
We're not here to sensationalize these tragedies, obviously, but to really dig into some specific cases. Our goal is to, understand the complex factors at play, not for the shock value, but to gain some real insight.
Exactly. In this deep dive, we're examining a series of cases from both the US and the UK. We're talking about young people, some as young as 12, others up to 21 at the time of their crimes.
12. Wow.
Yeah. And they committed incredibly violent acts that led to either death sentences or life imprisonment. We've gathered information on the specifics, the crimes, the motivations, where they're known, and the legal outcomes that followed.
And the sheer range of what seems to drive these actions is just staggering. I mean, we're looking at cases fueled by, well, the dangerous ideology of racism.
Yeah.
Instances where something like a disagreement over a grade turned fatal.
It's hard to fathom.
Right. Then there's this disturbing fascination with serial killers, delusion, the brutal end of friendships, just raw rage, robbery,
Yeah.
all resulting in this irreversible violence.
It's a stark reminder of the diverse and often deeply disturbing pathways that can lead young people to commit such extreme acts.
Yeah.
And our aim isn't just to, list these terrible events. We want to pull out the critical details, explore the underlying currents, maybe the societal responses these cases provoke.
So you, the listener, can hopefully see the complexities in youth violence and how the justice system tries to grapple with it all.
Exactly. It's about understanding the bigger picture.
So let's begin with a case that really brought the terrifying intersection of extremist ideology and youth violence into sharp focus. Dylan Roof.
Right. South Carolina.
This was June 17th, 2015 in Charleston. Roof, who was 21 at the time, walked into the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church during a Bible study.
And that church, it's important to remember, has huge historical significance. It's a vital part of the African American community, a center for activism for generations.
Absolutely. And he was there for nearly an hour, wasn't he, before?
Yes, before he opened fire, a horrific shooting spree that tragically took the lives of 9 innocent people, including the Reverend Clementa Pinckney.
Just devastating.
And what this case really shows, beyond the act itself, is how online spaces can become these echo chambers for hate, especially for young people maybe looking for identity or belonging.
That online radicalization piece is key.
It really is. The speed, the intensity, it's something we need to understand.
And the motive here was undeniably rooted in this hateful belief in white supremacy. Our sources detail how he had an online manifesto.
Filled with racist ideology.
Right. Frequented hate group websites, posed in photos with white supremacist flags. It was clearly targeted, driven by extremist beliefs.
The intentionality is chilling. He explicitly stated he wanted to ignite a race war.
Wow.
And even during his trial, despite attempts maybe to frame him as mentally unstable, his own words, his actions, they all pointed directly to this extremist ideology fueling his terrorism.
And the legal outcome reflected that.
Absolutely. Convicted of federal hate crimes, other charges, and ultimately sentenced to death in January 2017. It underscores the gravity, the hate-fueled motive.
It really forces us to confront the dangerous power of online radicalization, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How it can shape these extreme worldviews in young people.
Definitely.
Okay, moving to a case with a motive that feels almost incomprehensibly different. Willard Miller in Iowa.
Yeah, much more recent. November 2021.
Miller was only 16, and he, along with a friend, murdered their Spanish teacher, Noema Graber, in Fairfield, Iowa.
The contrast is stark, isn't it, between the ideology in the Roof case and this?
It really highlights the different paths. Impulse versus premeditation, maybe.
Well, what's deeply disturbing here is the apparent trigger. Miller was reportedly frustrated with a grade he got in Graber's class.
A grade.
That's what the reports suggest. The 2 students lured her to a park, ambushed her, beat her to death with a baseball bat, fatal blunt force trauma. Then they tried to hide the body under a tarp.
And the premeditation. I mean, you mentioned the trigger was a grade, but this wasn't spontaneous.
No, the digital evidence, social media exchanges between Miller and his friend really painted a picture of a planned killing.
Chilling.
It wasn't just an outburst, it was deliberate. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in 2023.
And the sentence.
Life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after 35 years.
Still, 35 years. It raises serious questions how minor frustrations can escalate like that in young people.
Indeed. It makes you think about the pressures kids face, academic, social, and the psychological factors. The sheer gap between the offense, a bad grade, and the brutal consequence. It's deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
It really underscores the need to understand how young people process frustration, anger, and when those emotions can take such a dark, destructive turn.
Okay, let's shift across the Atlantic now. The case of James Farweather in the UK.
Right, Colchester, Essex. This was between 2013 and 2014. He was only 15.
He's 15, and he committed multiple murders.
2 brutal murders. His first victim was 33-year-old James Atfield, stabbed over 100 times in a park.
100 times.
Then, 3 months later, he murdered 31-year-old Nahid Almana, a Saudi student, stabbing her 16 times.
And the motive here, was it ideological, like roof, or?
It seems different again, more like an intense fascination with serial killers. He actually admitted planning a continued killing spree.
Why?
Driven by a desire for notoriety, a twisted sense of power, violent fantasies. He even claimed to hear voices telling him to kill.
So a mix of fascination and maybe mental health issues.
Exactly. This case really highlights that intersection. The dangerous allure that violence, especially the way serial killers are sometimes portrayed in media, can have on young, impressionable minds.
And the role of mental health seems critical here.
Absolutely.
Oh.
He was apprehended in May 2015, near where he might have been planning another attack, armed with a knife.
Did he show remorse?
Reports suggest a lack of remorse, which is disturbing. He was eventually diagnosed with a personality disorder and sentenced to life imprisonment, minimum term of 27 years.
But that diagnosis, does it fully explain the desire for notoriety, the planning?
That's a crucial question, isn't it? A personality disorder can contribute to distorted thinking, sure, but does it fully account for wanting fame for killing? It suggests a complex interplay, maybe, between psychological vulnerabilities and external influences.
Like the content he was consuming.
Precisely. The kind of content young people are exposed to, and what support is there for those struggling with violent fantasies or, a distorted sense of reality.
Now let's turn to a truly disturbing case involving even younger individuals. Morgan Geyser and Anna Wire in Wisconsin.
Ah, yes, the Slender Man case.
May 2014. These girls were only 12 years old. They attacked their classmate, Peyton Leutner, in Waukesha.
It's almost mind-boggling. The idea that a fictional internet character could drive children to such violence.
What does that say about the power of online narratives, especially for kids that age?
Well, this case is particularly unsettling because the motive was literally rooted in a belief in Slender Man.
They thought he was real.
They seemed to. Geyser and Wire believed that by murdering Peyton, they would somehow prove their loyalty to this internet folklore figure. Become his proxies, essentially.
So they lured Peyton into the woods.
Yes, and Geyser stabbed her 19 times while Wire reportedly encouraged the attack. Miraculously, Peyton survived.
19 times
Yeah.
at age 12, driven by a fictional character.
The belief, while based on fiction, became a very real, powerful delusion for them. It really highlights how developing minds can sometimes struggle to distinguish fantasy from reality.
Especially when maybe reinforced in online communities.
Exactly, where they feel a sense of belonging.
They had planned this for months too, right?
Yes, it wasn't impulsive. Geyser pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide.
And the sentence reflected the mental health aspect.
Yes, 40 years in a mental health institution for Geyser. Wire was found guilty and got 25 years in a psychiatric facility.
This case really blurs those lines between fiction and reality, particularly for vulnerable adolescents.
It really does. It raises huge questions about internet culture, online communities, and the responsibility of parents, educators, everyone in helping kids navigate that.
How deeply this narrative took hold,
Yeah.
based on a delusion.
It underscores the need for awareness about potential dangers online, even in what seems like harmless entertainment or folklore.
Okay, another case that speaks to the complexities of teenage relationships turning deadly. Rachel Schoaf and Shalia Eddy,
West Virginia, July 2012.
both 16. They murdered their friend, Skylar Neese.
Bet.
And the motive here seems almost trivial.
On the surface, yes, the desire to end a friendship. But that stands in such stark contrast to the horrific, premeditated nature of the crime.
They just didn't want to be friends anymore.
Apparently, that was the reported reason. They decided they no longer wanted Skylar in their lives and decided the way to achieve that was to kill her.
It's just cold.
Incredibly callous. They lured her out of her home, drove her to a secluded area in Pennsylvania, and fatally stabbed her.
And then they covered it up.
For months, they misled police, the community, pretending Skylar had just run away. It was Schoaf who eventually confessed in January 2013.
Which led to finding Skylar's body.
Yes. Eddie initially maintained her innocence, but eventually confessed too.
What were the outcomes for them?
Shoaff pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, got 30 years, eligible for parole after 10. Eddie was convicted of first-degree murder life sentence, but eligible for parole after 15 years.
It's unsettling how a desire to end a friendship could escalate to such a calculated, brutal act.
What's striking is the premeditation, despite this seemingly shallow motive. It highlights the intense, sometimes volatile, emotional landscape of teenage relationships.
And the capacity for manipulation, extreme actions.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if there were earlier signs of this level of dysfunction in their relationships. What were the underlying issues?
Moving to a more recent and equally disturbing case, Mackenzie Shirilla in Ohio.
July 2022, she was 19.
And she intentionally drove her car at 100 miles per hour into a brick building,
Killing her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and her friend, Davin Flanagan, who were passengers.
100 miles per hour into a building. That's deliberate.
The investigation confirmed it wasn't an accident. Her actions were intentional.
What was the sentence?
Life, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. She was sentenced in August 2023.
Do we know more about the motive or her mental state?
The details surrounding her exact motivations remain somewhat unclear publicly, though there has been discussion about her mental state at the time. It highlights how complex it can be to fully understand the why, even after legal proceedings.
And this case is controversial, partly because of her age, right? 19.
Yes. The families of the victims have expressed immense grief, frustration. It really makes you question the complexities of responsibility, sentencing for young adults committing such violent acts.
Where is that line between youthful impulsivity, maybe poor judgment, and criminal culpability in such extreme circumstances?
It's a difficult question. Shirilla's case falls within this spectrum of young people committing extreme violence, possibly linked to personal relationships, maybe mental health.
Yeah.
And it underscores the challenges the justice system faces in determining appropriate consequences when the perpetrator is right on that cusp of adulthood.
Let's look at Dexter Darnell Johnson in Texas. This goes back to 2006. He was 18.
Right. Involved in a carjacking that resulted in the murders of Maria Areola, who was 23, and Hu Ningo, who was only 17.
Convicted of capital murder in 2007 and sentenced to death.
Yes. And this case really highlights the complexities, the lengthy legal processes involved, especially when you have questions of intellectual disability intersecting with capital punishment.
What's the situation there?
Well, what's significant is the ongoing legal battle over his intellectual capacity. His defense has consistently argued he's intellectually disabled, citing an IQ around 70.
Which is clinically significant.
It is. And this has led to multiple stays of execution. His case is right at the center of the debate about the death penalty and intellectual disability.
No. So where does it stand now?
As of early 2025, he remains on death row. The legal team is still pushing for a reevaluation of his sentence based on these grounds.
It forces us to consider the fairness, right? Applying the death penalty to someone with potentially diminished cognitive abilities?
It certainly does. It brings up those difficult questions about culpability, the nuances of applying the ultimate punishment, especially when factors like intellectual disability are present.
It underscores the need for careful consideration, ongoing legal review.
Absolutely. The legal definition of intellectual disability and how it applies in capital cases is a complex and, frankly, evolving area of law.
Then there's the case of Fernetta Torres in Georgia. October 2018, she was just 17.
Involved in a robbery that turned deadly.
How did that unfold?
Along with two accomplices, she apparently lured a 21-year-old man, William Tanchez, with the promise of intimacy, but the intention was robbery.
Okay.
During the robbery, Tanchez was fatally shot by one of Torres' accomplices. Torres herself took the victim's phone.
So even if she didn't pull the trigger?
Exactly. She and her co-conspirators were charged with felony murder and armed robbery.
Can you explain felony murder briefly?
Sure. It's a legal doctrine where if someone dies during the commission of a certain type of felony, like armed robbery, anyone participating in that felony can be charged with murder, even if they didn't directly cause the death.
Got it. So because a death occurred during the robbery she participated in, she faces the murder charge.
Precisely. What's striking is the involvement of such young individuals in a crime that resulted in a senseless death. As of January 2025, the legal proceedings were still ongoing, so final outcomes weren't public.
It really highlights how easily young people can get entangled in serious criminal activity. Peer influence, maybe?
That's often a factor. It underscores the need to understand the social and environmental factors contributing to this kind of involvement. What pressures led them down this path?
And it raises questions about interventions, preventing juvenile delinquency and violence.
Definitely.
We also have the grim case of Gregory Ramos in Florida, November 2018. He was 15.
And he murdered his mother, Gail Clevenger.
15. Matricide. After an argument about grades, similar to the Miller case motive.
Yes, reports indicate the argument was over his academic performance. The fact that it was matricide committed by someone so young over something that seems, relatively speaking, minor, it's just shocking.
What were the details?
The details are particularly disturbing. In what seems like a fit of rage, Ramos strangled his mother to death.
Oh my God.
Then he enlisted help from 2 friends to bury her body in a church cemetery, and he staged a burglary at their home to try and cover his tracks.
He involved friends.
Yes. He ultimately pleaded guilty, though. First-degree murder, abuse of a dead body, tampering with evidence.
And the sentence?
45 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years, sentenced in December 2021.
This case raises profound questions, doesn't it? Family dynamics, communication breakdowns, how unresolved conflict can lead to such extreme consequences.
And the psychological factors that could lead a young person to commit such a horrific act against a parent. It really underscores the need for better understanding of adolescent anger conflict resolution within families. Prevention.
Krista Gale Pike in Tennessee. This one goes back further. January 1995. She was 18.
Yes. She, along with 2 friends, murdered 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer.
And the brutality here was extreme, wasn't it?
Extremely brutal, and there was that disturbing element of keeping a souvenir. It really highlights the complexities, juvenile crime, potential mental health issues, the death penalty debate for young offenders.
What was the motive?
Apparently jealousy over a boyfriend. Pike lured Slemmer to a remote location. They taunted her, slashed her. Pike carved a pentagram into her chest.
A pentagram.
Yes, and ultimately smashed Slemmer's head with a piece of asphalt, killing her. And then, in a truly disturbing detail, Pike kept a piece of Slemmer's skull as a memento.
It's beyond comprehension.
She was convicted and sentenced to death in 1996, and reports indicate her violent behavior continued even after imprisonment.
Still on death row.
As of early 2025, yes, for 29 years. Pike's case underscores the potential for extreme violence even at a young age, raises critical questions about identifying, addressing such deeply disturbing tendencies early on.
And it adds another layer to that debate about the death penalty for individuals who commit crimes while technically adolescents or young adults.
Absolutely. Were there missed opportunities for intervention earlier in her life? It makes you wonder.
Okay, Austin Gregory Myers in Ohio, January 2014. He was 19.
Involved in a robbery that escalated and led to the murder of 18-year-old Justin Back.
Now, Myers didn't inflict the fatal wounds himself, right? It was an accomplice.
That's correct. His accomplice fatally stabbed the victim, but Myers helped restrain Back during the robbery.
And that was enough for a murder conviction.
The jury found him guilty of aggravated murder. Determining his role made him culpable. He was sentenced to death.
Even though his defense argued coercion, that he was pressured by the accomplice.
Yes, that was argued. This case really highlights the serious consequences of participating in a violent crime, even if you're not the one who directly carries out the killing. The concept of accomplice liability.
He's still on death row.
Yes, with ongoing legal appeals. It prompts us to consider how the justice system evaluates intent, the degree of influence, culpability, when multiple people are involved.
It's complex.
Very.
Conrad Schaefer in Florida, June 2013. He was just 15.
And he committed multiple murders.
What happened there?
Schaefer, along with an accomplice, gunned down 2 victims, 17-year-old David Guerrero and 22-year-old Eric Ruppner.
Was there a clear motive? Robbery, like some others?
That's what's particularly unsettling here. No clear motive was apparent. It seemed like a senseless attack.
How was he caught?
Linked to the killings via a tip. Reports mentioned erratic behavior in custody and a history of mental health struggles.
So young age, mental health history, no clear motive.
Right. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder in January 2016.
And the sentence?
2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole.
Life without parole for crimes committed at 15. That's significant.
It is. Despite his age, the brutality led to that severe sentence. His case contributes to that ongoing, very difficult debate about life sentences without parole for juvenile offenders.
Especially when a clear motive is absent, it makes the question of rehabilitation versus punishment even more challenging.
Exactly. What kind of psychological landscape leads to such seemingly random violence?
Jaqua Ashanti Williams in Alabama, August 2023. She was 18.
This is a heartbreaking case. She faced a charge of capital murder after abandoning her newborn baby in a dumpster.
And the baby died.
Yes, from asphyxiation. It's incredibly tragic.
Did she not know about safe haven laws?
She chose not to utilize Alabama's safe haven law, which allows parents to safely surrender newborns at designated places, no questions asked.
So her actions raise huge questions.
About teenage pregnancy, mental health support, the immense pressures on young mothers, awareness and accessibility of safe haven laws. All of it.
Where does her case stand?
As of early 2025, she was awaiting trial for capital murder.
It really underscores the need for support systems, accessible resources, awareness of options, education, community support, to prevent such tragedies.
Absolutely. What factors lead to such a desperate, tragic decision?
Alec McKinney in Colorado, May 2019. He was 16.
Another incredibly difficult case, the STEM School Highlands Ranch shooting.
He wasn't alone, right?
No, he carried out the shooting with an 18-year-old accomplice. One student, Kendra Castillo, tragically died trying to stop them. 8 others were injured.
Just awful. What do we know about McKinney's background?
Reports indicate he struggled with mental health issues and was said to be influenced by the older accomplice.
He pleaded guilty.
Yes, to all charges, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Another life without parole sentence for a juvenile offender.
Yes, and this case is another stark reminder of ongoing issues.
Yeah.
Gun violence in schools, school safety, how we treat juveniles in the criminal justice system, especially those with mental health challenges, access to firearms.
It's a tragic addition to a list that's already far too long.
It really highlights the urgent need for comprehensive strategies. A multifaceted approach involving schools, families, communities, mental health services, gun control.
Michael Shane Bargo in Florida, April 2011. He was 18.
This case involved the brutal murder of 15-year-old Seth Jackson.
How brutal are we talking?
Extremely. Jackson was lured, beaten, shot, and then his body was burned. The remains were disposed of in a limestone pit.
Just horrific. What was the motive?
Said to be rooted in personal animosity, a desire to assert control. Bargo was convicted of first-degree murder in 2014.
And the sentence?
Death. However, he continues to pursue appeals.
On what grounds?
Arguing he was too young, 18 at the time, to receive the death penalty. This again raises that significant question about the fairness of sentencing juveniles or those just reaching adulthood to death.
It brings those legal and ethical complexities of juvenile sentencing, especially capital punishment, right into sharp focus again.
Definitely. Developmental psychology, the capacity for change in young offenders, the legal and moral arguments are deeply complex.
Okay, finally, Elisa Bruckhart in Missouri, October 2009. She was 15.
And she murdered a 9-year-old girl, Elizabeth Olton.
15 murdering a 9-year-old? How?
She lured Elizabeth into the woods, strangled her with a shoelace, slashed her throat, and stabbed her.
And she documented her thoughts.
Yes, in a journal. Her motivations were deeply troubling, reportedly a fascination with killing, a desire for attention and control. She also reportedly struggled with depression.
The journal entries must have been key evidence.
They certainly painted a disturbing picture of her mindset leading up to the murder. Despite her defense focusing on a troubled upbringing and psychological issues, she was convicted.
What was the sentence?
Life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years.
This case seems to really highlight the importance of recognizing warning signs.
Absolutely. Early warning signs of emotional and psychological distress in young people. Bruckhart's case is a chilling reminder of the potential for extreme violence in young people struggling with significant psychological issues.
It underscores the critical need for early identification, intervention, access to mental health support for adolescents.
You think about the role of mental health services in schools, in communities. Could this have been prevented?
So as we reflect on all these deeply disturbing cases, several key themes really stand out, don't they?
They really do.
We see this incredibly broad spectrum of motivations, everything from hateful ideologies
Like Ruth.
to seemingly trivial interpersonal conflicts like ending a friendship or a bad grade,
Yeah.
to just escalate to unimaginable violence.
Yeah, the Chopin case or Miller and Ramos.
The ages, too.
Yeah.
Spanning that crucial period from early adolescence, like Geyser and Wire at 12.
Right up to young adulthood, like Ruth at 21, a critical developmental window.
And the legal outcomes are just as varied. Life sentences, death sentences, psychiatric commitment, parole eligibility differences, reflecting the complexities our justice systems face.
Definitely. When confronting such extreme acts committed by young people, There are certainly no easy answers here.
No, not at all. And the sheer reality of youth violence is, well, profoundly unsettling.
Precisely. This deep dive hopefully offers a concentrated look at these complex situations, giving some insight into the diverse factors that contribute and the myriad ways legal systems in different places grapple with these tragedies. It underscores the multifaceted nature of youth violence and the significant challenges in both understanding and preventing it.
So here's a final thought, maybe for you, the listener, to consider. What does it truly say about our society when individuals so young are capable of such profound violence? How should the justice system navigate that delicate balance between the need for punishment, accountability, and the potential for rehabilitation, especially considering the ongoing developmental stage of these offenders?
It's a fundamental question.
And maybe most importantly, what are the early warning signs that we as a society, as communities, as individuals, might be overlooking?